In this video, you're going to learn how to use After Effects as a beginner. This will be the only After Effects course that you'll need to get started and learn the basics of After Effects. This full-length beginner's course will consist of multiple parts and lessons, so make sure to not skip around too much and also rewatch any part as many times as you need until you learn it. Also, if you watch until the end, I'm going to be giving you the project file that I'm going to be working on in this video so that you can learn faster. I think learning After Effects is really the next big step in a lot of editors' journeys these days, just because learning a software such as this is what's going to separate you from those who are mediocre in video editing and place you above a lot of the competition that you currently have as a video editor. So I hope this video is going to be helpful for you in that regard, and yeah, I think we can just get into it, and I hope you enjoy it. Alright, so once you open After Effects, this is the screen that you're going to be greeted with. This is the home screen, and as you see right here, here's the most recent project that I worked on inside of After Effects. And here we have the option to either open project, which we already have saved on our computer, or we can just click new project for the purpose of this video. And now after creating your project, you can head over to file and click save as and save the project somewhere on your computer. So I'll just save it here in this folder and click save. So this way we just know where the project is saved, and it helps a lot with organizing. I will circle back to saving the project later on in the video, but for now let's just keep going. So what you see on my screen right now might not be exactly matching to what you see on yours. Maybe the panels differ or anything else, and this is because we have different workspace setups. So how we deal with setting up the workspaces inside of After Effects is you head over here to Window, and under Workspace you see all these different options that you can choose from. These different workspaces are tailored to whatever you're working with. So let's say if you're working with effects, then you might use this one, or animation, or if you're coloring the video, you might use this one. But personally, for my own workflow, I just always use all panels and kind of adjust it to my liking. So yeah, for now you can also click all panels, and your workspace should look like mine right now. Now let's say if you want to set up the workspace in a different way, whichever works best for you. Let's say if we want to drag the effects and presets panel, what we do is just click down and hold on it, and if you see that once we drag around, we can place it somewhere else on the screen. So just as an example, I will place it down here below the project panel, and you can see that we can access all effects and presets in this window. I will place the effects panel back in the original spot where we took it from, since I don't want to make this too confusing for beginners. So probably before setting up your workspace, you should learn the fundamentals. So let's just get into that. And also let's quickly cover settings so we don't have to do that later. So if you head over here to the top left and click on After Effects and click settings right here, then you will be greeted with this preferences tab. And the only few things that I would change here is, first of all, go to media and disk cache, and I would first of all enable disk cache if you don't have it enabled yet, and bring this to around 100 gigabytes, or depending on what computer you're working on, you can either bring it higher or lower. So yeah, just make sure this is enabled. And the next thing that we will change is go over here to autosave and also enable auto saving. So I think it should be automatically set to 20 minutes. So you can either leave it at 20 minutes or decrease it to something lower like 5. Me personally, I've had times when I was working on a video and having the auto save set to every 5 minutes saved me a lot of time. So this will depend on your workflow, but setting it to every 5 to 20 minutes is going to be fine. And one last thing that will change is under memory and performance, you will see that there is this memory or RAM, and in here you should bring down the reserved memory for other applications. So right now I have it at 6 gigabytes. I can bring it down to 3, but I'll leave it at 6. And as you can see right here, this will just leave more RAM to be available for After Effects. And also in this page, you can enable multi-frame rendering, so this will just make After Effects perform faster. Other than that, there's nothing else to change in the settings, so we can just click OK and move forward. So now we will create a composition, and in After Effects there's two ways to do this. You can either click on this new composition here, or click new composition up here. And in this page you can change the resolution of the video, so I'll just set it 1920 to 1080. And you can also change the frame rate. So right now we have it at 23.9. I can set it to 30 if I'd like. You can also set the duration of the composition. So right now it's at 43 seconds. And if you would like to set it to 1 minute, for example, you would just click here, type in 1 and change the seconds to 0. And if we create it now, that is going to be a 1 minute long composition. You can also rename it right here, but I'll just leave it as it is, so we can click OK, and this will create a new composition. And just to clarify, the composition is where you're going to be editing the video. This is basically the same as creating a sequence in Premiere Pro. But another way to do this is you can simply grab your video file and drag it inside of After Effects right here. You will see that it loads in, and now we can just drag it on top of this, and this will create a new composition, which is in the same exact resolution and frame rate of the footage that I just dragged in. So if we check right here under composition settings, then you can see that this footage is in 4K and 29.97 frame rate. Now, just to quickly explain everything that is on screen right now, this is the main composition. So this is where you'll see all of your edits, the video itself, and everything else that you add to the composition. This down here is the timeline panel, so you can scroll through the video. This is where all of your layers, including the footage and everything else that you will add, all of the layers of it will be here. As for example, this is the video layer that we have right here. On this side of the timeline panel, you will have a lot of different controls, but we will get into that later. And up here, you have the project panel. And the project panel is where you will have access to all of the files and the assets that you drag into the project. So now I will drag this PNG image inside of the project panel and drag it on top of the timeline. So as you can see, it placed below the footage, but I'm going to place the footage below it. And this is the PNG file that I just imported. What I will cover now is the keyboard shortcuts. And learning shortcuts is probably one of the most important things that you have to learn in After Effects. Once you learn to use them efficiently, you're going to be much faster in your workflow. So let's just cover the most basic ones, and I'll also show you how to set up custom shortcuts. So starting off, some of the most important shortcuts will be Command plus D or Control if you're on Windows. So if we click Command plus D, that is going to duplicate the layer that we have selected. And now we have two of these PNG images on top of each other in the layers, as you can see right here. You can do the same thing by just copy pasting. So Command C plus Command V, and that is also going to create a copy of the layer. Just like on many other programs, if you click Command plus Z, that is just going to reverse or undo the action that you just did. So right here you can see if I move it and click Command Z, that just undoes the action that I just did. But let's say if you want to delete the layer, then you can use multiple shortcuts. For example, backspace to delete it. You can also use Command X to delete it, and also you can use delete on the keyboard to delete it. So there's multiple ways to go about this. If you would like to split one layer into two, then you can click Command Shift D, and as you can see right here, we have just split the layer in two parts. And wherever you place your time indicator, that is where it's going to do the split. So if we place it here and click Command Shift D, then it's going to split it at this exact part. Now another important shortcut is the bracket keys. So let's say if I select this layer that I have right here, you can see that the starting point is here around 22 seconds. But if I place my time indicator at 10 seconds and press the left bracket key, then you will see it will bring it to the time indicator. And the same thing for the right bracket key. So it will bring the endpoint to the spot that I have placed it on. So those are some of the basic shortcuts that you can use. And if you would like to get more familiar with the other shortcuts, as well as set your own custom ones, then you can head over here to the top left corner under Edit and click on Keyboard Shortcuts. This is the window that will pop up, and here you can see all the different keys and what their functions are. You can also scroll through here. And if you would like to set custom shortcuts, then what you can do is just find the action that you want to do. So in this case, I'll type in split, and right here we can see the current combination is Shift Command D. And I can either rewrite it or just add another one. So if I keybind it to a random key such as O and click OK, then once we click O, you will see that it does the same splitting motion. So this is how you set custom keybinds. As we keep going through the video, I will show you a few more later on. So now we can just click OK and get back to the composition. So now we're gonna get into how to use the transform controls on your layers. So if you click this drop down button and click it once again under transform on your layer, you will see these 5 different controls. And to quickly show and demonstrate what each of them do, I will start off with opacity. So what opacity does is it controls the transparency of the layer. Right now it's at 100%, but if we bring it down, then we can see that the layer becomes more transparent, and if we bring it down to 0, then it becomes fully transparent. We can also click on this and use our keyboard to type in the value. So let's say 50. Then it brings the opacity to 50%, as you can see. Now moving on to rotation, this is just going to rotate the layer. So we can fully rotate it 360 degrees, and we can also type in the value. So 180, it is going to rotate it 180 degrees. Now with the scale, we can either increase or decrease the size of the layer. By default, it's set to 100. Moving on to position, it's quite straightforward. It's just where the layer is going to be placed. So this left value is the horizontal axis, and this right value is the vertical axis. We can also just grab this layer with our cursor and move it around, and as you can see, the position values also change. And now as for the anchor point, you will see that if we change these values, it seems like it's also changing the position. But this is not the actual use of the anchor point. The anchor point by default is set to the center of the layer. But let's say if we change these values to have the anchor point be at the corner of the layer, just like this, then you will see once we, for example, rotate the layer, it's going to be rotating around that anchor point. And also if we use scale, for example, it's going to be scaling up starting from that center point. So yeah, you can think of the anchor point as the center for the layer. Alright, now that you're familiar with these transform controls, I will quickly cover the toolbar, and after that we will get into keyframes. So the toolbar is this row of icons at the top left of your screen. Starting with the first one, we have the selection tool, which previously we used to move this icon around, and this is basically like your mouse cursor in After Effects. And also, if you cover your mouse over any of the tools, you can see in the end, in the round brackets, it says V. So this is the shortcut for this exact selection tool. For example, if we hover over the hand tool, you can see that the shortcut for it is H. So it's important to also learn these shortcuts. And now moving on to the second tool, which is the hand tool, this just lets you better navigate throughout the workspace. So we can move around in the workspace. Also here on the timeline, if we zoom in, for example, we can move left and right, and also vertically if we have multiple layers added. So the hand tool is just going to help you navigate better. Another way to use the hand tool without having to click H or clicking here is by clicking in the scroll wheel. So if you click on it, it will instantly activate the hand tool and you can move around. And once you release it, it's going to return to the regular tool. Now the third one is the zoom tool. I personally don't use it since I find it easier to use the scroll wheel for zooming. But the way this tool works is, for example, if you select this part, it's just going to zoom into it. And yeah, I much prefer just using the scroll wheel, so zooming in and out like this. And also for this, if you check here on the bottom left side in the composition, here you can see the percentages of how zoomed it is. And for example, if you're lost in the composition, you can just click fit and it's instantly going to fit it to the composition. So you can return back to the default layout. The next three tools which are grayed out are used for 3D layers. So I won't be covering that topic in this video since it's a little bit too complicated for beginners. So we'll just move forward. This tool, which is the rotation tool, lets you do the same thing as this rotation transform control. So right now we have the footage selected, and if we use the rotate tool, it just lets us rotate the layer that we have selected. Same thing for the icon as well. The next tool, which is called the pan behind, we can use for the anchor points. So this is an easier way to set it. For example, if we want to put it in the corner, we can just place it here. Now the shape tool, if you click on it and hold, you will see it will bring up all these different options. And this is used for two purposes, either creating masks on the layers or creating shapes. So for the first purpose, which is creating masks, we will select this rectangle tool. And you see that once we drag this creates a mask of the shape that we just drew. Now if we head back and select, for example, the ellipse tool, this lets us create a circle mask. So if we hold shift, it's going to automatically keep the aspect ratio so it doesn't squeeze and distort as if we release it. So remember the shortcut, hold shift to create perfect masks, and same thing applies to the rectangle tool and all the other ones as well. If we disable the icon and select the footage layer, we can do the same thing by creating these masks. So yeah, this is how the mask tool works. Now as for creating shapes, I will hold this down and select the start tool and make sure that no layer is selected. So I'll just click in this gray space, and now we don't have any layers selected. So now we can just drag on a composition and you can see that it creates a shape for us. Up here you have the shape controls, so you can either decrease the size of the stroke, you can change the color of it. If you click here, you can also increase the opacity of the fill, and so on. If we select some other shape, for example the rectangle, and drag it on the composition, you can see it creates a shape. So this blue layer right here, that is the shape layer. And if you click under here, under the shape, you get some more controls, so you can play around with that, but I won't do it in this video. So for now, I'll just delete this layer and move on to the next tool. And that is going to be the pen tool. Now the pen tool basically works the same as the shape tool, you just get more freedom with creating the shapes. So now I will select this icon layer and just start drawing. As you can see, we can create these points which will connect and turn into a shape. So right now I'll just do a random shape such as this, and you can see that it masks it out the same way. You also have these controls over the dots, so if you select this dot, for example, you can move it around. And also you have these levers which you can pull and manipulate the shape. I will undo the mask now and deselect every layer. And if you see, if we start creating a shape with it, it does the same thing. So this way you can create any type of shape that you want to and just create it to your liking. I will delete both of these shape layers now, and let's move on to the next tool, which is the text tool. If we just click here on the composition and start typing in our keyboards, so I'll just type in After Effects. And so we have created the text layer. I can use the selection tool to move it around. And if we double click on it and go to this right side under character, then we can, for example, change the font size, we can change the font itself, and all these other options as well. You can change the color here and so on. If you don't see this character tab right here, then you can go under window and make sure that it's enabled right here. For now, I will delete the text layer and move on to the next tools. So the brush tool, the stamp tool, and the eraser tool, I'll be honest, I've never seen anyone use, but either way, I can show you what they do. So the brush tool, you can paint with it, I guess, like this. And with the eraser tool, you can delete that paint, but I'll be honest, nobody uses this. Then next up, we have the roto brush tool, with which you can separate objects in the video from the background. So if I were to select myself with this and play the video back, then you can see I've removed myself from the background, and I can also invert it, so I remove myself and keep only the background and so on. I'm not going to get too deep into the settings of rotoscope since I'll have another video coming up for that, so this is just so you know what rotobrush does. I will delete it for now, and the last tool is the puppet tool. You will use this tool for things like animation, so I can quickly demonstrate it. If I select it, then it creates a puppet point, which I can drag around, and using this tool you can animate things like body parts moving and so on. I also won't get too deep into explaining what the puppet tool does in this video, so let's just delete it for now. And that's basically it for the toolbar. We covered every tool that we have right here. Now let's get into keyframing, and I will be keyframing the transform controls under this icon. So first of all, I will just grab this icon and move it to the left side and also scale it down a little bit. So now I'll go into the transform controls right here, and how we create keyframes is by clicking this little clock icon on the left side. So I will create keyframes for position, for scale, and for rotation. Here you can see the 3 keyframes on top of each other, so I'll just select them all and bring them to the beginning. Now my idea is to have the icon pop up, so I will go to the start now, and here I will just set the scale value to 0. As you see, it instantly created a keyframe right here, and if we play it back now, you can see that the icon slowly pops up. So this is the purpose of keyframing, having it go from one value to the next. I also want the icon to rotate as it's coming in, so I will just twist this to the left a little bit, and then I will bring this keyframe to the start as well. Now if we play it back, once again we can see that both scale and also rotation is keyframed. And the last thing that I will keyframe is the position, so I just want it to come in from the left side, so I'll just grab this value and bring it all the way out of the composition. Now I'm going to bring this keyframe to the start, and here we have all 3 keyframes animated. So we can quickly watch it back, and this is how it's currently looking. Now we have the keyframe set, but the animation still looks kind of choppy and linear. So one easy and quick fix that we can do is just select all of the keyframes that we have made right here and just click F9 on your keyboard. And once you do that, you can see that the keyframes transformed, and this is called easy easing. Here on the screen now you can see the difference of before and after applying easy ease. If you want to customize these keyframes even further and make the animation smoother, what you can do is click on this graph editor. And just to quickly explain what the graph editor does, if we select these keyframes and zoom in a little bit, with these controls we can either make the ending or the start more smooth or less smooth. So if we grab these yellow levers right here and hold shift while dragging it to the left, and hold this first one and drag it to the right, then you'll see that the end of this animation is a lot smoother than before. And if we watch it back, you will see the difference. Now motion graphing and the graph editor is a topic for an entire video, so I also won't get too deep into that, but this is a simple principle to understand. You can also switch it over to value graph by right clicking, and here you can better understand. So for example, just this position, the curved S line is the X position. So at the start you can see that if we hover over it, the value is minus 370 pixels, but as we go on, the end value is 906 pixels. So this is just the value going from the left to the right. It's the same for the scale value. So if we open the motion graph with scale, then we can see at the start it's 0%, and then it just goes up to 60% at the end. You also have the ability to edit it here, so we can either make it smoother or less smoother depending on what you want to do. And that's basically everything you need to understand about keyframing to understand the basics. There's not much more to it than just animating values to go from one to the other. Now what we can also do is select these keyframes and copy and paste them. So this will just paste the same keyframes later on in the timeline. But what I want to do is inverse the animation. So first of all, I will copy these last keyframes and paste them right here, and then grab the first ones and paste them after. So this is just going to do the opposite of the motion that we had before. So you can see first it comes up and then later it goes away. If we select these last ones and go into the graph editor, you can see that they're messed up and not the same as the first ones. So let me just quickly go through the speed graph and select them, and I will adjust them just like the first ones. And now we have the icon both pop up and also go off screen. What I will also do now is create and animate keyframes on the footage behind. But before I do that, I want to do one thing, which is parenting the icon to the footage itself. So once I do this and start moving around the footage, you can see that the icon moves together with it. So let's say if we do a zoom here, that also means that the icon is going to be moving together with the footage. Now I will quickly just keyframe position and scale. I will set these default keyframes at the start, zoom in a little bit. And one pro tip is you always want to keep the eye level at the same level. So one way that you can do this is if you click here under the composition and click on proportional grid, you will see these green lines, which you can use to make sure that the eyes are always at the same level. So here we can see that it's a little bit below the second green line, and once we zoom in, it's basically on it. So let me just drag this down a little bit, and I want the position to move towards the icon, so I'll place it right here. Now we can just disable this proportional grid since we already made the animation, and grab these keyframes and easy ease them. I will do the same thing as before, so just copy them. So I'll paste them here, bring the first ones to the end, and bring these a little bit forward. Select all of them, go into the graph editor, select them all, and just adjust the smoothness of them, just like before. So this will be fine. And this is how it's looking right now. So I actually think that motion was a little bit too fast, so I'll just readjust it to be a bit slower. So let me grab this, expand it, and this should be good. I also think that the scale is too big, so it's zoomed in too far. What I can do is select the scale, go into graph editor, and enable this value graph. Now I can see that this is the 0 point, and this is where it zooms into. So we can see it's at 139%. What I can do is just select both of these keyframes and just bring them down a little bit. So now we have the zoom value be at 128. I can see that once I did that, also there appeared a black bar here, so I'll have to select the position as well. So if we just select it and move it, it's going to automatically edit both of these keyframes, so we don't have to worry about reanimating them. And so this is how it looks right now. Another simple thing that you can just enable to make the animation look smoother when doing transform controls is this motion blur. So here, if we zoom in and I just click it a few times, you can see the difference. It automatically creates a motion blur depending on the way that it's moving. I can also enable it on the footage below it, and now we have automatic motion blur on the composition. Now, a few more keyboard shortcuts which will be useful for you if you're working with keyframes and especially transform controls. The first shortcut is clicking U. So this is just going to reveal all the keyframes that have been made. This way you don't have to, for example, go down to the drop down menu and see all the other controls as well. If you click U, you only see the ones that have been created. And what you can also remember is the part shortcut. So if you just spell the word parts on any layer, you will see that if you click P, it brings up position. If you click A, it brings up anchor point. If you click R, it brings up the rotation. If you click T, it brings up the opacity, and if you click S, then it brings up the scale. So these are all the transform controls. And yeah, an easy way to remember is the parts shortcuts. And on the side note, if you want to zoom in and see the keyframes better, then you can use plus and minus on your keyboard. So I select the timeline right here, click plus, and as you can see, it zooms in. And if I click minus on the keyboard, it zooms out. You can also use this time navigator to do the same, but I prefer to use the keyboard. Now, moving on from keyframes, I want to cover creating layers. So I will close these and start off with right-clicking in this gray space. If you head over here to new, you can see that you have the option to create these different types of layers. So you can create a text, but that is self-explanatory, so I won't click that. You can create a solid, which is going to offer you to pick the color of the solid. So I will just select it to be black and click OK. So this is the layer that it created, and it basically creates like a black screen. If you move it around, you can see this is a solid. I will toggle it off so we don't see it for now, but moving on to the next type of layer, we will skip light, we will skip camera since it's not necessary in this course, and we'll go to null object. A null object is a layer that you don't see on the screen, but you can see the controls for it right here. And mostly it's going to be used for things like, for example, parenting something to the null object and having it move around. Let's say if you create 3 more of these icons, you can all parent them to this null and have it be invisible, but control all of them at once. There's a few more use cases for a null object, but I won't cover those now, so let me just delete it. And now moving on to the next layer, that is going to be an adjustment layer. So basically what an adjustment layer does is, let's say if you apply an effect such as exposure to the adjustment layer and then bring the exposure down, it will apply the effect to everything that is below it. So let's say if we bring it down below the icon and only have it on top of the footage, you will see that it only applies to the footage and not the icon itself. This can be used for many things, especially when working with effects, but for now we won't be using this. What I will use the black solid for is I will enable it back and place it below the logo. Now I will grab the mask tool and create a mask like this, which only leaves the left side slightly visible. Now if we go under here, under mask controls on the solid layer and click down here again, we can see that we can invert the mask. And now we only see the solid on the left side. And what I will also do on this mask is increase the feather. So you can see it makes the edge look very soft on the mask. I can increase it a little bit more. And basically the purpose of this is just to make the background for this icon a little bit darker so it stands out more. Now I will animate the opacity on the solid layer by clicking T and keyframing opacity. So I will create a keyframe at 100 and go to the start and bring it down to 0. Now I will copy these keyframes, paste them later on, bring the first one to the end. And you can see that I have the solid behind the icon slowly appear and then disappear as well. I actually want the solid to cover a little bit more, so I'll select the selection tool and just bring this mask to the right a little bit. So yeah, you can see the difference now. So this is what we've made so far. And now let's cover creating text animations. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll just grab the text tool and type under this icon, and I will type course. I will just grab the text and move it under the icon like this, and also parent it to the logo. If you didn't know, After Effects has a lot of built-in presets that you can use for both text and other types of animations. So let me go under here, under the Effects and Presets panel, and open this Animation Presets. And once you open this, you'll see a bunch of folders with different purposes and different animations inside of them. But for this purpose, I'll just open text. For this text right here, I will just click on Animate In, and I will find one that I like. I will use this Fade Up Characters preset, so let me just drag it onto the text. And if we watch it back, you can see the characters appearing one by one. I would suggest that you just go through these and test them out for yourself, since if I were to do it right now, it would take too long. But yeah, definitely try these out. See what all the other text presets have to offer, and also the other animation presets as well. For now, I'll actually reverse this, so I'll remove the animation, and I will use a preset that is under text and under blurs, and that will be blur and fade in. So let me just drag it onto the layer, and if we watch it back, this is the animation that it automatically prepares for us. Now, if we select the layer and click U like before when working with keyframes, you can see that these keyframes were made from the preset. So we can also move them around, we can make the animation appear faster, we can apply easy ease to them, and so on. So I'll just move it to the front here and watch it back and see if I like it. I think I will extend it by selecting both keyframes and holding Alt or Option and extending it like this. Yeah, I think that looks great. I will also apply a fade out blur like this, and also if we click U, we can see that this is the fade in animation keyframes and this is the fade out. So now if we watch it back again, it fades out from the other side. I will make this one shorter, and I think that's good. So yeah, there's literally tens if not hundreds of different animation presets that you can use only for text, and not even speaking about all the other ones such as for shapes, for backgrounds, and so on. So make sure to spend some time going through these animation presets since they're valuable and you can create some good edits with it. Now we have the composition well put together. We have done the keyframes for zoom ins, we have the animation of the logo coming in, we have added text and also the animation on the text, but it still looks a bit blank. So this is where effects come in, and I will show you some of the best effects that I would use in this case. So now the first effect that I'll add is called a 4-color gradient. So let's just drag it onto the icon. And right now it looks like this, but what I'll do instead is change the blending mode to multiply, and I will change these 4 colors to have the first 2 be white and the last 2 be black. Now you can already see what kind of effect this does, but we have to move around these points, which are the color points, to kind of create like this gradient and shadow type of effect. So I will place it like this, and we can check the before and after. We can see that this gives a lot of texture to the icon. The next effect that I will use is light sweep. So this one right here, you can see that once we add it, it creates this light going over the layer type of effect. What we can do now is play with the settings right here. So for example, we can increase the width, and what I'll do now is decrease the sweep intensity to 0. And the effect that this gives is just the outline on the outside of the icon. I will increase the width a little bit more and also increase the edge thickness like this. So let's check the before and after once again, and you can see that with only 2 effects applied, it instantly gives it so much more depth. What I think I'll also add is a simple glow, so we just type in glow and add this one. And by default it creates an effect like this, which I actually quite like, but still you can play around with different settings. So we can have the glow threshold, the glow radius. So I think I'll actually leave this first glow as it is and just click Command D on this effect, and this creates another one. And on the second one, I will increase the threshold and up the radius for it, and also decrease the intensity. So right now we have something like this, which I actually quite like. I'm gonna go back up here on the effects and close all of these, and I will create another light sweep effect. So I will grab it from here and place it above all the other ones except the gradient. And for this effect, I just want to animate the light sweep going over the logo. So let me place it in this corner first. I will rotate it like this, 45 degrees, and I will increase the width a little bit and also decrease the intensity. Now for the first keyframe, I will place it outside of the logo. I will keyframe the center. Now I will click U on this layer and we can see this first keyframe that's created right here, and I'll just place it at the start and drag this down here. So now we can see this is the start keyframe and this is the end keyframe, and this is the effect that it does. So we have the light sweep going over the icon. I think it's a little bit too bright, so I'll just decrease the intensity like this. And that's basically it for all of the effects that I wanted to apply on the icon. Now let's head over to the text and add some text effects. I actually have a preset prepared which is available to everyone on videoeditors.io, so you can just simply use this one, which is called DVD text texture. So once you apply it, you can see the before and after right here. But what I'll do is close this off and turn off this VR chromatic aberration, so it doesn't have this like edge 3D effect. You can feel free to copy these effect settings on the left side that you see in this effects panel. And yeah, that's it for adding the effects on these layers. Right now on the screen you can see the before and after, and the difference is huge. A quick pro tip which will save you hours in working on After Effects is saving presets for the effects. So let's say right here I have these 5 effects that I applied to the logo. What I want to do is just save it as a preset. So you go up here to animation and click save animation preset. Now you can choose the location where you want to save it, so I'll just save it here under my presets, and I will name it DVD logo texture, just like this, and save it. So now anytime you're in After Effects and you open this effects and presets panel and you type in the name of it, so DVD logo text texture, we have the preset right here. So now for example, if I drag in a new logo and I want to apply the same preset to it, I just select the layer, double click on this preset, and it's instantly applied to it as well. Maybe you'll need to tweak things like, for example, the color gradient so that the logo is actually visible. So you can see these points are displaced and not the same as on the original logo. Let's just replace these points. And yeah, instantly this looks much better. For now, I'll just delete this. And that's it for the basics of effects. So you can go through all of these. You can see that there's hundreds of effects available that you can just use however you'd like. Also, a huge part of After Effects is plugins. So these can be either new effects that you can use or also some other tools that you can use inside of After Effects. But I won't be covering the plugins in this video, so you can check out some videos around which are the best plugins to use, what each plugin does, and so on. Now, I think we have completed the composition to how I wanted it to look like, so we can head on over to export settings. So if you want to export your composition as a video in After Effects, what you do first is select the in and out points. So currently you can see that the whole entire composition is selected, and this is the area that will be rendered. And there's 2 ways to adjust this. So you can either grab this and just select the part that you want rendered. So this gray line of the composition, we can go through it, that will be rendered. And another way that we can do this is we can select the in and out points. So with the in point, we can click B on the keyboard. By default, it should set the in point. And we can go to the end and click N, which is going to select the out point. For now, I'll just go to the very first keyframe, click B, and go to the end and click N. Now for exporting, you can either use the Adobe Media Encoder or you can just render it straight on After Effects. So that is what I'm going to do. The shortcut for this is Ctrl M on Windows and Ctrl Command M on Mac. You can also do this up here by going to File, Export, and Add to Render Queue. So this is what you'll see in the render queue. In the latest versions of After Effects, it instantly sets pretty decent settings, so you don't even have to worry about changing those. But if you want to change them, you can head over here to Output Module, click here. And if we, let's say, want to change the bitrate, then we can go in here and change the bitrate to 30 megabytes per second. We can also change the file format, so we can render in MP4, we can render in QuickTime, and all these other options as well. For now, I'll just leave it on MP4, have the megabytes per second be at 32, and click OK. Up here we have the render settings, so if you click on those, it will automatically be set to the composition settings, so we can see it's 4K and 30 FPS. I'll just click OK on this. And the last thing we can change is the output. So you can rename the file how you'd like and choose the folder that it will be rendered to. For me, this is good, so I'll click save and click render. Great, now we finished the render, and that's basically it. In my file explorer, I can see that the video has been saved, and I can watch it back in the player. Alright, you finished the After Effects course, and I hope you gathered some valuable lessons. The next step now is remembering those lessons and using them in your own After Effects journey. Take what you learned today and try to replicate something for yourself. Learning After Effects will not be a quick journey, and it will not take only a few days to master it. You have to be consistent throughout weeks or even months. So once again, I hope this was really valuable for you, and if you would like to take your After Effects skills to the next level, then you can check the first link in the description, where I host a bunch of courses around After Effects, teaching people how to get better at it. And also, we have a bunch of other professional video editors, as well as a community which will help you in your video editing journey. So you can check the first link in the description for that, and I hope this video was valuable for you. If you would like to see more of these types of videos, then you can hit the subscribe and like, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.